Welcome to Waters World. I'm Jesse Waters. We got problems. That's the subject of tonight's Waters Words. The only thing Democrats are good at is attacking us. They're actually great at it. It's honestly all they do. Instead of attacking problems, they just attack us. Because to them, we're the biggest problem. But the real problems are starting to pile up. The media doesn't cover them because we didn't cause them. Then once we point it out and try fixing it, we get attacked. We try to get kids back in the classroom, and teachers tell us we're white supremacists. Sacramento teacher Damian Harmony said he was disappointed to hear the, quote, cynical, pearl-clutching faux urgency, ableist, structurally white supremacist hysteria over returning to schools, and accused parents of bullying the school board into making schools less safe for the teachers. Mr. Harmony wasn't punished. Why would he be? One student who returned vaccinated got screamed at by a mask maniac posing as a teacher. Delightful now, doesn't she? So after a year of our children falling behind in school, what does Biden do? He sent every school extra tutors and computers. Of course he didn't. That would make too much sense. Instead, Joe Biden okayed public schools teaching critical race theory, which means if you're white, you're racist, and if you're black, you're oppressed by white racists. I'd rather go back to remote learning than have kids hear that poison. Now, I'm over here saying, Biden, you blew up the border. They just nabbed a Middle Eastern guy and a convicted sex trafficker from Guatemala. That's racist, they say. You just hate immigrants. But, Mr. President, 500,000 illegals came across already this year. That's 2 decades of records shattered. We're making progress, they tell us.
We need to get Congress to go get involved. Congress is not doing any kind of job. Congress is just sitting on its thumbs, doing selfies.
Congress is controlled by who? The Democrats. And they haven't moved on immigration. Democrats are focused on the real threat. The Democrat Congress wants to set up a commission to investigate January 6th. The same incident that's been investigated by the FBI, the Capitol Hill Police, the D.C. Police, Homeland Security, 60 Minutes, the Washington Post, on and on. I could go out on the street with a mic, and more people would know about January 6th than July 4th, which we can't celebrate unless we've been vaccinated, says the president. Let's check in with the commander-in-chief.
Did he hate it?
Did that go backwards? And New York's a nightmare. Pro-Palestinian mobs chucked a little Rice Krispie into the Diamond District. Oh, are we in the Mideast or Midtown? That's right across the street from Fox, by the way. The New York Attorney General has everything under control, right? She's opening a criminal probe, but not into this, into the Trump Organization. People shot in Times Square, broad daylight, slashed on the subway, pools of blood. But she wants the books on Bedminster. That's what it is. They're teaching this in Oregon. Chicago's a shooting gallery. 37 shot last weekend, 6 kids. So Mayor Lightfoot needs a distraction. She's decided not to sit down for interviews with whites.
The facts are the facts. And the fact is that this press corps does not reflect the diversity of the city, and it makes a difference in the kinds of coverage. We're having a powerful and important conversation around systemic racism in every institution. And the press and the media can't be exempt from that conversation.
And without a plan, Joe Biden is going to stumble America into another war in Europe if he isn't careful. Biden dropped sanctions on Russia's pipeline into Germany this week, giving Putin a huge gift. Almost all our allies are against this, except Germany. But Trump was tough on Germany, as he should have been. So now the White House says we need to repair our alliance with Germany. Hey, guys, who are we allies against? Russia, remember? And Russia gets paid billions by this pipeline, straight into the Kremlin's pockets because Gazprom is state-owned. And what does the Kremlin do with that money? Hack our pipelines. So we pay them ransom. Did Joe know about that?
Were you briefed on the fact that the company did pay the ransom?
I have no comment on that.
Biden making Russia really rich and happy. Must be a Russian agent. Oops, sorry, that was Trump. who actually slapped so many sanctions on that pipeline that construction was halted. Then construction restarted once Biden was sworn in. But we don't hear Trader Joe from the media, do we? Biden stops American pipelines and greenlights Russian ones. That Nord Stream pipeline goes through the Baltic Sea, slices our Eastern European NATO allies out of the game. Their pipeline, obsolete. So Putin's going to gobble up Ukraine and breathe down Poland's neck right next door, a NATO ally. And now we'll have to get involved. And every time America has to save Europe, lots of people die. Biden just can't connect the dots, though. He can't really connect with a crowd either. Here he is at the Coast Guard graduation ceremony.
I can only assume that you will enjoy educating your family about how the Coast Guard is, quote, the hard nucleus around the Navy forms in times of war. You're a really dull class. I mean, come on, man.
Here's Ronald Reagan. Same age, same event, same line.
My Coast Guard aides have been excellent. One of them taught me that, and I quote, the Coast Guard is that hard nucleus about which the Navy forms in time of war.
That's how you do it. Now, I shouldn't have compared the two. Biden-Carter, much better comparison. Feckless on the world stage, bullied by the Kremlin, inflation, high gas prices. This in earlier from the desk of Donald Trump. Quote, I see that everybody is comparing Joe Biden to Jimmy Carter. It would seem to me that it is very unfair to Jimmy Carter. Jimmy mishandled crisis after crisis, but Biden has created crisis after crisis, unquote. Trump couldn't tweet that because Twitter canceled him. Trump should just call himself Crisis, so Democrats ignore him. Joining us now to react, former Arkansas governor and Fox News contributor Mike Huckabee. So what's your reaction to Waters' words, Governor?
Jesse, it was one of your best.
Thank you.
I think you should have put the caption on there when the Carters and the Bidens were together. My favorite was somebody put on the meme, it said, honey, I shrunk the Carters, because that's what it looked like. But it was great, and I really, I thought one of the things maybe best was when you're talking about how that the Democrats, they're in charge of Congress. And, you know, our mutual pal, Juan Williams, who keeps saying Congress ought to do something. Yeah, they should. They ought to go home and let some adults run the place. Here's the fact. Elections created these problems by putting Democrats in power.
Right.
And the only thing that fixes it is when the next election will give conservatives, I didn't say Republicans, I said conservatives power, because there's some Republicans that need to go home too. Liz Cheney and a few others who seem to want to side with the other side more than they do their own. But that's what changes this whole trajectory of where our country is headed. You pretty well laid out the complete picture in a very,
you're
very
right. And the
effective
big
way.
picture, Governor, is they take our money, they spend it on their donors and their voters, they create problems, then ignore them, and then we try to help, and they call us racist. I mean, that's pretty much how it goes every single time. How does that ever change, Governor?
Well, we got to push back and fight back. Too many people, as soon as they're called a racist, same thing if they're called a Nazi, they just sort of fold up, get in the fetal position, jump up under a piece of furniture, never to be seen or heard from again. It's time that we stand up and say, no, I'm not a racist, I'm not a Nazi. I'm tired of being called it, and let's just have an honest discussion. And if you can't, leave the playing field, because I'm advancing, I'm not retreating, and we're not retreating ever again. We're advancing, and we're going to make sure that the next generation of Americans grow up with liberty and free speech and things that people actually lived, fought, and died for. And not a single person in our military ever died so that kids would run and hide behind a mask or behind the teacher's skirt because they were afraid that something like the booger bear might bite them.
Yeah, I actually saw kids at recess playing in the park, broad daylight, sunny day, and they're all masked up. And we know the science. It's stupid. So, like you said, you got to change this at the voting booth. There's no doubt about that. But Republicans are completely shut out of power for at least the next 2 years. What's the strategy? If you were advising the Republican Party the next 2 years, what do you tell them to do? Because right now it's looking bleak.
Well, first of all, organize at the precinct level all the way up and be prepared for the election. Make sure that we monitor every last bit of it. Don't wait until afterwards and say, can we see how that was done? Do it in advance. But the next big thing, Jesse, crystallize a very simple but effective message of what we will do as Republicans if we're in power. We will seal the border. We will deregulate. We will cut taxes, not raise them. We won't pay people to sit at home and not work. We're going to make some really significant reforms in Congress. Here's one I'd throw out there. I've got a bunch in mind, but one that I would put out. If the government ever shuts down your business, the government official who shut it down doesn't get paid until your business opens back up. Let that be a reform. Put it into law. We would have a lot fewer opportunities for businesses to be closed by a government official who never missed his or her paycheck.
I like it. The Huckabee bill. I think that'll just sail right through, Governor. Thanks for coming on.
Sure.
Water's World.
You bet, Jesse.
Joe Biden could be the laziest president in our century. He didn't campaign, and now he's not governing. And his schedule's about as empty as his head. And he's completely surrendered to Russia. Less than 6 months in office. Let's recap. Russians hacked the Colonial Pipeline. The company pays nearly $5 million in ransom. The FBI just clears Putin. Then Biden drops sanctions on Russia's pipeline to Germany, and that pipeline's just a gold mine for Russia. It would double their sales to Europe and stack the Kremlin's pockets, money they'll use on hacking, assassinations, arms sales to our enemies. And the pipeline bypasses Ukraine, leaving them open to invasion. The Biden team insisted they'd stop it.
The President-elect strongly agrees with you that Nord Stream 2 is a bad idea. And he's been very clear about that. And I'm determined to do whatever we can to prevent that completion, the last 100 yards. Very much agree.
They said they'd stop it, and then they just dropped it. Why? Something about German diplomacy. It made no sense. Just a cop-out. And where's all the media in all of this? Silent, protecting Biden at all costs. When the news broke on Tuesday, CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, NBC all skipped it on their evening shows. Joining me now, former State Department spokesperson Morgan Ortagus. Why'd they just drop it like this, Morgan? It's like they didn't even give it a shot.
Well, it's a mystery, not only because this goes against what Secretary Blinken and others pledged in their confirmation hearings. It goes against a bipartisan consensus against this Nord Stream 2 pipeline. The Obama administration, when Biden was vice president, was against this pipeline, and bipartisan members of Congress, I mean, majority of Congress, for a very long time have been opposed to this. And why is it? Because this pipeline would give Russia the ability to have control, to have leverage over Europe's energy resources.
So Morgan,
and why would you want our allies to be beholden to Russia?
Exactly. So
no
Morgan,
sense.
they for 4 years talked about how they were so tough on Russia and how Russia was the biggest threat in the world and we need to stand up to Vladimir Putin. And the minute they get in power, they just bow down. And they say something about, oh, we got to help our friends in Germany. None of our other allies want this. The French don't. The British don't.
That's right.
The Ukrainians don't. I mean, how great has Germany been as an ally? I mean, they don't really contribute that many soldiers. They tariff the hell out of our products. They haven't been with us in a lot of stuff recently. This is about kissing Germany's butt. Why?
Well, that logic also doesn't make sense from the administration because actually Nord Stream 2, if you look at the polling in Germany, is becoming more and more unpopular amongst the German people. There's also no need for it, right? Germany could import gas from America. So there's other resources. It's not like this is their only option. As you mentioned, Ukraine and many of our Eastern European allies have been very worried about this. And the one thing I can tell you, Jesse, having been with Mike Pompeo and the Russians many times over the past 2 years, and he was Secretary of State, they are very tough, and they know when people are bluffing. They know whenever your words are backed by actions. And there's just a lot of tough rhetoric from this administration. They seem to think that talking tough is the same thing as actually being tough. But whenever you cancel the Keystone Pipeline and do things that will lessen America's ability to be energy independent and lessen America's ability to export, yet you provide the Russians the ability to do so,
right.
I just don't see how from a geopolitical perspective that this is beneficial to our own national security or the national security of any of our allies.
Vladimir Putin's testing Biden. He's failed every test. The guy blinked. We got kicked out of the Black Sea. We paid ransom to Russian hackers and didn't say a word about Putin. And now we okay a pipeline into Germany, which basically slices Eastern Europe from the rest of Western Europe. And Biden's letting them just walk all over the place and has done absolutely nothing. If this were Trump, be traitor Trump. That's what this would be. And I'm just disgusted by it. And we're going to probably lose lives and treasure because of it, because we're going to have to go just mop up this mess somehow. Morgan Ortagus, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks.
Joe Rogan and Chris Rock, provocative comments about straight white men and woke jokes. Adam Carolla is here after the break. Liberals are mad at Joe Rogan. What's new? Over comments he made involving straight white males and cancel culture. Watch.
You can never be woke enough. That's the problem. It keeps going. It keeps going further and further and further down the line. And if you get to the point where you capitulate, where you agree to all these demands, it will eventually get to straight white men are not allowed to talk.
Right.
Because it's your privilege to express yourself when other people of color have been silenced throughout history. We just got to be nice to each other, man. And there's a lot of people that are taking advantage of this weirdness in our culture, and then that becomes their thing. Their thing is calling people out for their privilege, calling people out for their position. You know, it's crazy times.
Joining me now is comedian and author of I'm Your Emotional Support Animal, Navigating Our All-Woke, No-Joke Culture, Adam Carolla. So, Adam, I think you and I could probably both agree it's a little ironic that two straight white males with our own shows are having a conversation here about maybe being silenced. But I just wanted to have you on because I wanted to know if you agreed with Joe Rogan that eventually this is where this thing ends up.
Well, I think we've learned, anyone who's been alive for the last 5 years has learned that it's called a progressive movement. And as I always say, it's got progress and movement right in the title. So there is no signs of slowing down or pumping the brakes. And as we've seen, it just goes from one thing to the next.
Yep.
Stuff that they're pitching today would have sounded bizarre and like science fiction and Orwellian 3 years ago.
Yep.
And they're pitching the same stuff with a straight face now. Like, I live in Los Angeles, California. California is trying to do some curriculum with the schools where they're going to eliminate AP math up until the 11th grade to sort of level the playing field. I mean, stuff, they're calling math racist.
Right.
So stuff like that, which would have sounded patently insane a few years ago, is now become a conversation. So I agree with Joe. I don't think there's any signs of them slowing down. They've certainly not provided any evidence that they were ever content. If you ever listen to someone like AOC speak, who I believe is sort of the mouthpiece for this movement, she's never satisfied. She never pumps the brakes. She never stops. She's never satiated. So why wouldn't it keep going this direction?
And that's a good point, because they're always upset about something. And my thing is, it's not my fault you have problems, right? You can't blame all of your problems on me. Maybe those are just your problems. So comedian Chris Rock came along, and he was on one of the morning shows, and he said people aren't even taking any risks in comedy anymore because they're so scared of getting canceled, and nothing's funny. Listen.
What happens is everybody gets safe.
Right.
And when everybody gets safe and nobody tries anything, things get boring.
Right. Absolutely.
So I see a lot of unfunny comedians. I see unfunny TV shows. I see unfunny award shows. I see unfunny movies, because everybody's scared to make a move.
You're familiar with this business. Have you noticed that things are kind of less funny these days? Have you picked up on that?
Yeah, obviously what you're going to have is people you've never heard of attempting to go out and sort of push the envelope, but people that are in the mainstream that want to keep their jobs, who you've sort of heard of, are looking at hanging on to what they have. So you're not going to hear it from any of the traditional names out there, whoever your Jerry Seinfelds are out there, or whoever your sort of household name comedians. You're not going to hear a bunch of super edgy stuff coming out from them. They're not going to be pushing it. You're going to hear it from people you've never heard of, which is, you know, a little bit of a catch-22 because we kind of lived in a world where you're, you know, George Carlin or Richard Pryor, you know, these were the guys that were the mainstream guys, and they were also pushing the envelope. They were also sort of pushing back against the man and society, not unknown people doing, you know, coffee houses during open mics at
Right.
4 in the morning on a Tuesday.
Right. And you use the word edgy, and that's what comedy is about. You find that edge and you play with it. And if people move back from that edge, or the edge itself keeps moving back, it's not funny. And if we're not laughing, we're not having a good time here in America. Everyone's laughing at Adam Carolla, though, because the show's taken off and the book's doing well, and you're just uncancelable. So you should be proud of that. And thanks for coming on the show, Adam.
Thanks, Jesse.
And he's talking about all of this stuff on PragerU.com. Go there right now. Well, after Waters World, you can go there. The true history of race in America, some things you've never heard of before. Also, I hit the streets in New York to ask about masks. Wait till you see this. The battle over critical race theory in classrooms raging across the country. So far, 13 states have some type of ban on it to keep kids safe from being indoctrinated. But if Biden had it his way, there'd be no choice.
I don't think we believe that educating the youth and leaders of the future leaders of the country on systemic racism is indoctrination. That's actually responsible.
But that's not really what this is about at all. Joining us now to discuss, Bob Woodson, founder of the Woodson Center, and he's got a new book out this week, Red, White, and Black, Rescuing American History from Revisionists and Race Hustlers. All right, Bob, before we get to the book, which is incredible, tell us in about 30 seconds the problem with critical race theory being taught in class.
Critical race theory, in the old days, used to call it stereotyping. Instead of saying that all blacks have to live and eat and sleep and carry themselves in such a way, we're saying white people are stereotyped, that they are guilty of supremacy, of being privileged, and all white people are evil because of racism, and all blacks are victims. That's simply put.
So it overgeneralizes.
Used to be called stereotyping.
Right, stereotyping.
Exactly.
All white people, all black people, all Hispanic people. It's not like that. It removes individualism.
Used to be called stereotyping.
Right. Okay,
Right.
good. All right. So I just started this book this morning, and just found a lot of great nuggets in here that I had no idea about. And I was a history major. It never trickled down to me, or I just maybe missed that day in school. Tell us some things in your book that most people don't know about the history of race in the United States.
Well, first of all, the false history is that the challenges facing large swaths of black Americans today, out of wedlock birth, the crime, the violence, the lack of economic parity in these cities, that's a legacy of slavery and Jim Crow. It's not true. In our essays, we go back to tell the real story of black America. It was never defined by slavery and Jim Crow. For instance, when whites were at their worst, blacks were at their best. When we were denied access to hotels, we built our own. Every major city, the Wallahaji Hotel in Atlanta, the Calvert Hotel in Miami, the St. Teresa, I could go on.
And you talk about schools, too.
And schools. The education gap in the South between in 1920 and 1940 was 3 years, 8 years for whites, 5 years good. Booker T. Washington partnered with Julius Rosenwald, the CEO of Sears. He put up $4 million. The black community matched it with 4.8, and they built 5,000 Rosenwald schools in the South. And they were operating with used textbooks, half the budgets, but they closed the education gap between 1920 to 1940 within 6 months.
And you talk about
we did that.
The danger of guilty white Americans always trying to help black Americans. And sometimes that help does not materialize the way it
Jesse, I would rather confront the old-fashioned bigotry, because they're hurting us with the helping hand. Between 1930 and 1940, when racism was enshrined in law, the black America had the highest marriage rate than any other group. Because of our Christian faith, our belief in families and self-determination, elderly people could walk safely in that community. Chicago, in the Brownsville section, blacks had 731 black-owned businesses in 1929 and $100 million in real estate assets, and the out-of-wedlock birth was under 9%.
And a lot of
I could go on.
And a lot of the money that's pouring into helping Black America doesn't always get to where it's supposed to get, because you say the race hustlers actually make money off of trying to help Black America.
We've had, in one sense, we've had reparations for 60 years. It was called a poverty program. $22 trillion, Jesse. 70 cents of every one of those dollars did not go to the poor. It went to those who served the poor. They asked which problems are fundable, not which ones are solvable. And as a consequence, we created a commodity out of poor people where there's a perverse incentives for them to be uplifted. And so what we have done in this essay is pull the covers off of this exploitation and began to tell the real story of Black America. One interesting, in fact, there were 20 slaves who were born slaves who died millionaires. And 2 of them went back and purchased a plantation on which they were slaves. And one of them, Robert Smalls, took in the destitute family of the slave owner in an act of what I call radical grace.
I love that phrase.
So what we're doing at
this book is
the Woodson
tremendous.
Center, we
Red,
want to
White, and
replace
Black.
critical race theory.
Rescuing American History from Revisionists and Race Hustlers. It's a collection of great essays edited by you, and I implore all Americans to get this book because it's eye-opening. Thank you so much for writing it and editing it, and we're very appreciative of you coming on the show.
Thank you, Jesse. I appreciate the opportunity.
Americans going bananas over Bitcoin. The Wolf of Wall Street is in Waters' world to break it down.
Bitcoin this morning stabilized.
Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, even Bitcoin, which bounced. Bitcoin is nuts. Up 33%.
Everyone's going bonkers over Bitcoin. That's all you hear about. So what is it? Who's getting rich off it? And why is Elon Musk making everyone nuts over it? Here to break it all down is the Wolf of Wall Street, Jordan Belfort. Jordan, just lay it on me. First of all, what is Bitcoin?
So the best way to explain Bitcoin is if you take out any bill, like a $1 bill or a $100 bill, you'll see a serial number on it, right? That serial number corresponds to some entry in a computer in the government, because this bill is legitimate. Well, just imagine if all this stuff that's in code, like in the cloud somewhere, right? Everybody's Bitcoin has its own code, except rather than being a government that says it's real, it's decentralized. There's all these different computers around the world all running the same code. And if enough of them say a transaction is real, it's deemed as being real. So it's all about like multiple computers all over deciding that this particular transaction is legit.
All right,
so
I think I got it.
The central bank.
I think I got it. It's like a computer code that's become a currency that people trade and can invest in. All right. Now, we had one of our producers on the 5 explain what Bitcoin is, and he pulled up his Bitcoin account. And I saw this guy when he invested in 2017. I mean, the guy's made like, he's my producer, and the guy's cleaning up. And I went to the bathroom. I came back. He'd already made 5 Gs. Am I missing something? Am I late to the Bitcoin game? Should I be investing in Bitcoin? Because this 31-year-old kid is like, he's like wearing gold now.
It can be pretty frustrating for those that didn't invest really early. But here's the thing. No one really knows what's going to happen. I'd be lying to them and I knew where Bitcoin was going. Right now, it's plummeting fast. It's down 50% in the last 10 days, right? And there's major issues with governments like China saying they're not going to allow it.
But look where it started. It started at like $2,000 a coin, and now it was like at 60 grand the other day. And it's all over the place, and people are going nuts because
Can I give you the perfect analogy?
Elon Musk says something, and he just tanks Bitcoin, and everyone wants to storm the castle.
Let me explain. Bitcoin operates by whoever is the cutest girl in school, that's where all the money goes. So Elon was the cutest girl in school for a long time. If Elon said it, then everyone buys Bitcoin or Dogecoin. So what happened was, it's people say, is it a Ponzi scheme? Well, the thing is, everyone knows that it's a Ponzi scheme, so it's not really a Ponzi scheme. Everyone knows there's no value there. Everyone decides to buy it, and I guess it's worth money, right? So it's a really weird instrument, but it's
not
really
backed
about
by anything.
who is the cutest girl in school.
Right, it's the hottest girl in school.
Nope.
It's all subjective.
That's it.
Yep. All right, you know what? The hottest girl in school and then the little tiny numbers on the dollar bill, best analogies I've ever heard, because to this day I still didn't understand it. Wolf of Wall Street, breaking it all down for us. Thanks, Jordan. I appreciate it. New York City's reopening, and I'm back on the street. So you're vaccinated, right? Mm-hmm. And you're wearing a mask outside. Yep. Why are you doing that? The country's opening back up, especially here in New York, and most Americans are ready. Some are a little nervous. So I went out to the streets in New York City and asked people, what's going on? New York is back in business. You guys pumped up?
Very excited. I've never seen this many people in a while. It makes me super happy. I'm so happy.
Try to control yourself. How did you survive quarantine?
Some lotion and sanitizer, lotion.
Did you use a lot of lotion?
Yeah.
Where'd you get that sick face shield?
I got this in Mexico.
Are you vaccinated?
No, I'm not vaccinated. I'm meditating on it at the moment.
Namaste.
Yeah, namaste.
I will transfer my karma. Here is my karma on you.
How was quarantine for you?
It was pretty good. I actually escaped the city and moved to Mexico for a year.
Yeah, open borders Biden just lets anyone in. So you're vaccinated, right? Mm-hmm. And you're wearing a mask outside.
Yep.
Why are you doing that?
Just for safety things, because there's still people that, I could potentially carry COVID even if I have the vaccine, I think.
Dr. Fauci said you can take the mask off.
Yeah.
Can I see that smile? There you go.
There's a smile.
You're vaccinated and you're double masking.
Yeah, I feel like now that's out of habit, and I'm also extremely paranoid.
Kinds of holes in her and sucked out the blood.
People like yourself who's also anti-maskers.
So how do you know I'm anti-mask?
Because I watched some of you.
Well, then why do I have a mask right here?
Okay.
Do you love Dr. Fauci?
I mean, love is a strong word.
Do you strongly like Fauci?
Who's that? I'm deadass.
I'm not a fan of anybody.
If I love the guy personally, I mean, I don't know him, so I don't
Maybe
know.
you could get to know him.
Maybe. Well, maybe we have a couple drinks and we'll see how it goes.
Be honest. Do I make you horny, baby?
Where did this virus come from?
I mean, I'm not sure.
China.
I mean.
You have no idea?
I mean, I don't want to say anything. You got the microphone on my face. Like, I don't know.
Kind of like they come from animals, and that's what it seems like. It's sort of like.
Do you think someone did something a little with an animal?
You got it going on.
My parents had COVID, and I don't really believe in none of that COVID, to be honest. But it is what it is.
Your whole family had COVID.
Yeah, they were
You don't
sick.
believe in COVID?
No, because I didn't have it.
Do you plan on getting vaccinated?
I'm already vaccinated. Next.
Which one?
Actually, I got the Johnson.
Me too.
Good for you.
Single shot.
Absolutely.
I don't like needles. I'm one and done.
I don't know, but let's continue.
Okay. So you have no idea who I am?
Not at all.
There's a great book coming out called How I Saved the World by Jesse Waters.
No idea who that is.
You look familiar. I don't know from where.
I mean, you're Jesse, though, right?
You may have seen me on such shows as Friends.
And by the way, Y-O-U''RE means you are. Y-O-U-R means you're.
Yeah. No. That's right.
That's crazy.
I know. So you have no idea who I am.
Is it Gunfield? Whatever. Who had the TV show, comedy show for a second?
I'm Waters.
and this is my world.
Up next, last call. How I Saved the World, that's right, I did, hits shelves July 6th. But I'm going to give you a little sneak peek just to, titillate you. Here's an excerpt from the book. Dick was 50 and intimidating, and I was still drunk. This was a bad situation, so I got changed and jumped into his truck. 45 minutes later, I'm in an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. It's a public school classroom filled with drunks and drug addicts and me. Don't you want to know how that ends? Order the book, How I Saved the World. Get it anywhere, Amazon, HarperCollins, July 6th. Don't be an idiot and not get the book. That's all for tonight. Be sure to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Justice with Judge Jeanine is next. And remember, I'm Waters, and this is my world.